Welcome to Conversations with Ico and Friends, where we talk about the roofing business. Now, here's your host, the editor of Canadian Contractor Magazine, Patrick Flannery.
Okay, everybody, welcome to Conversations with Ico and Friends. This is our performance applications panel, and I'm kind of excited because I think we're really going to deliver the meat and potatoes here on some interesting technical and scientific even information, some building engineering information. There's a lot of neat research that our friends that are with us here today have been involved in that we're going to hear about. So to get started, rather than me reading off a bunch of notes, I'll just get everybody to introduce themselves like we're at some association meeting. Jack, why don't we start with you?
No problem. Thanks so much. My name is Jack Gottesman. I am on the marketing team at Ico.
Great. And Dan?
Hi, I'm Dan Sandink. I'm Director of Research with the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction. That's a disaster risk reduction institute based at Western University in London, Ontario.
Fantastic. So we have somebody. Are you actually coming to us from Canada, Dan?
I am in Canada. I work from the Toronto office and I live in Ajax, and that's where I am today.
Awesome. I'm in London, Ontario myself. So
there
you go. Yeah. And let's go to Mark Oakland, who is not in Oakland, California, but he is he's here with us.
I'm in cold and rainy Chicago, Illinois. So you can hear me, okay?
Yep.
And I've been with Ico for 17 years. I am currently a national accounts manager for Ico down here in the States, but my most recent role with Ico over the past 4 years was product development manager for the residential side for all of North America.
Fantastic. And let's go to Mark Zainal with a Z, as we say here in the North.
Hi, I'm Mark Zainal. I'm the Senior Roofing Specialist for IBHS, which is the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. I've been in the roofing industry since 1980.
Fantastic. That's it's really great to have all you guys with us. I think we've got the sort of knowledge base here that should lead to a really great discussion. Dan, I think we're gonna start with you just to kind of set the tone, the environment for roofing and building engineering technology that we've got right now. What can you give us just a sort of the big view of what the code landscape looks like right now for roofing in Canada and how things might be changing?
Yeah, so right now there's a lot of work going on at the national level concerning potential impacts of climate change on buildings, on all types of buildings. At ICLR, we tend to focus on residential construction. One of the reasons is that we see a lot of the disaster loss in Canada attributed to homes as opposed to engineered buildings and that sort of thing. At the national level, there's quite a bit of work that's been motivated by big disaster events that we've seen in Canada, notably the Alberta floods, the Toronto floods in 2013, that were billions of dollars in total losses, the Fort McMurray fire, that was $4 billion, the most expensive disaster loss in Canadian history, and also a general review of climate data that's used in the design of buildings and in sort of setting thresholds for Part 9 buildings in the codes. So a few specific things related to roofing. For wildland fire, there's going to be a new wildland urban interface fire guide for Canada that's being developed by NRC. And the guide covers the whole community, the whole building. But with respect to roofs specifically, the intent is to reduce risk of ignition from embers and also reduce the risk that embers might enter the building through the roof. And there's a number of potential changes or recommendations for roofing there. Also at the national level, they're reviewing all of the climate indices that are used for building design that could affect wind indices, rain indices that affect building design. And so we could see some changes. That's more likely 2025 code, but that information is going to be released soon and we may see some early application. And there's also been, from our industry, the insurance industry, quite a bit of interest in wind and hail. And there's going to be a new standard on high wind resilience for Part 9 for low-rise residential buildings, CSA S520, that's in the works. And that will certainly have some roofing implications, underlayment, sealing the roof deck, that sort of thing that IBHS has been working on for quite some time.
And this is because they feel like climate change is going to cause stronger storms.
Well, yeah. So climate change, we know, will cause more wildfires, stormier weather, more intense rainfall events. From our perspective, from the insurance industry, we see a lot of loss due to wind and recently hail, but especially wind. Wind's considered the second most important driver of loss, and roofs are particularly vulnerable, as I'm sure IBHS can attest to. And we see a lot of damage associated with, loss of shingles and that sort of thing. And so that's a really important part of the overall discussion.
So on the back of that, Mark Zed, I know that you've been involved in looking at better ways to protect roofs from bad weather, from the wind, from the rain that Dan has been talking about. Things that are going to be more concern to contractors, roofing contractors and general contractors, when they look at how to design those roofs. What have you been looking at in terms of better ways to protect roofs from extreme weather?
Well, it's interesting. I just got back from Alabama where Hurricane Sally just went through, and we did some recon work traveling around the area to see how our fortified products fared in the storm, and how other roofs and we just don't do roofs. We actually do building envelope enhancements. So, but we primarily looked at roofs. So the roof, we've done a lot of testing, and I guess the bottom line really is we encourage people to nail the roof deck down, because if the roof deck doesn't stay in place, obviously the roofing components on top aren't going to be there either. Once that's actually secured, and we encourage people to use 8D ring shank nails. And once that's secured, then we can go towards the underlayment. And one of the primary focuses on fortified is the sealed roof deck. So everybody has a roof cover, and that roof cover can get damaged. Doesn't matter how you put it on. If you put it on right, you put it on wrong, you have flying debris, like Dan was saying, things just going through the air, and there's nothing you can do about that. But if that roof cover is damaged, you have what we call a sealed roof deck or secondary water barrier that's in place that will help keep the water out. The wind is the lever that opens the door to the real damage, and that real damage is going to be the water intrusion, and that's really what we focus on. We want the roofs to stay in place, but we really want to keep that water out. So we focused in on that through a sealed roof deck.
One of the reasons I think it's great to have you with us here today, Mark, is because of your experience in these hurricane zones. And it's not a thing that we think about in most of Canada. Obviously, the East Coast, specifically Newfoundland, they might get into a bit of hurricane-rated stuff, but it's not the common thing. So I think there's a lot of knowledge from how the building is done down there that we can hopefully bring north, so that we're hitting these new codes. Because as Dan says, it's moving in that direction, and there's going to be more and more concern about this kind of thing. Dan, why don't you chime in and just give us an idea of maybe how much of that knowledge really translates to Canada, and what the difference is going to be between how Canadians have done their roofs in the past and what the direction is they're going to have to go in the future.
So we, in preparing some of these new guides and standards, we have relied pretty heavily on IBHS guidance. The research is the best in the world for home construction and resilience. So as you mentioned, in Canada, we're not on the Gulf Coast. We don't have the same level of hurricane risk. And we have sort of a few areas in Canada that are identified as high risk zones for high wind, Part 9. In Part 9, the National Building Code, for example, there's a few areas in Newfoundland and Alberta, et cetera. But we do have tornado risk across the country, so that's one type of risk. And we also have, straight line wind events that cause quite a bit of damage that fall below that high wind risk threshold. So first, tornado. There is a map of tornado likelihood in the code. And you'll see that most of the populated areas of Canada, southern Ontario, southern Quebec, across the prairies, is prone to tornado events. And some regions are prone to EF2 and higher. What we see in tornado events, though, is that the damage from a damaged track varies across all levels of tornado damage, right from EF0, which is sort of some visible damage to the building, up to the actual rating of the tornado. So, for example, in Dunrobin, I'm sure several people in Canada will be familiar with that. In 2018, near Ottawa, that was classified as an EF3 tornado event. And there were several buildings that were totally wiped off there. All walls were down and that sort of thing. But if you look at the full damage track, most of the damage is EF0, EF1 within that damage track, and that's loss of roof cover. And so, as Mark Zed mentioned, when you lose that roof cover, a big part of the risk is not just the roof covering itself. It's not a huge loss for the insurance industry, but when you get water penetrating that roof deck, when you lose your roof cover, that becomes a big problem. And so we'd like to address that. And also, we had a big wind event that was below the threshold for high wind risk in the code in southern Ontario, southern Quebec in 2018 that caused well over $600 million in damage. And most of that damage was the sort of the roof covering, siding, and that sort of thing. So we do see a lot of damage. It's not the same level of damage that we see in the US, but we certainly do have the risk. And as I mentioned before, wind is overall in the insurance industry the second most common cause of disaster events.
Mark, one thing that occurs to me, Mark said, one thing that occurs to me listening to that is cold. You work in you're looking at the hurricane events in the south. You're developing things to resist high wind. Do any of those solutions ever run into trouble when they're put into freeze thaw environments or colder environments?
Yes, we've run into that, and I think each manufacturer will tell you that especially if we're talking about shingles, that you have to have certain conditions to install the shingles because you want that adhesive to seal, and that needs to warm up. Whether it's the sun or the heat from below, it's got to warm up to be able to seal that roof properly. And that's the responsibility of the contractor to know the requirements that the manufacturers put in place, because they are the experts on their material. So you need to follow those installation instructions. And that's one of the things that we really focus on with what we call our Fortified program at IBHS. Because along with what Dan was saying was that 90% or more of the closed claims that we've looked at IBHS are roof related. So whether it's a hurricane event, just a huge straight line wind event, like Dan was saying, or tornado, people don't realize the impact that the wind has. We hear EF5 and everybody gets excited, EF5 or EF3. If you look at some of the paths of the EF5, they're very small in comparison to the entire path that it cut through. And we really feel that if you install the building components properly, you really cut out a lot of the debris that's flying around that creates more damage. So the EF0, EF1 areas, and possibly into EF2, if the installation procedures are proper in there, a lot of that damage can actually be cut out. That's what we've seen through our testing. Is for those of you who see me talking in the background, that's where our lab is, and it's 6 stories on the inside, and we can really we put things to the limit. So that's what Dan was saying, that we really see how the components work together, not as individual, but as a system. So they all have to work together.
Yeah. You mentioned that Fortify program, Mark. And just give us the FYI on just what that's all about, because I'm not sure everyone's 100% familiar.
Well, the Fortified program was developed out of all the science that we have. So everything that happens in that room behind me, we kind of put together. And we have a three levels. We have the fortified roof, the fortified silver, and the fortified gold. Fortified gold is the load path, includes the outside of the building. Fortified silver is kind of like the envelope, the windows, and the garage door are incorporated in that. But the first thing that you got to get to is your roof. The roof is the primary thing that we look at. You cannot get to gold without going to roof. So the roof is such an important part of a house. It takes all the brunt year round, night and day, of all the weather that comes and goes. It's always exposed. So it is actually, it's a shield that we have, and we need to make sure that it's installed properly and protected. So that's what we focus on. And we talked earlier about nailing the deck, sealing the deck, and then an important part is following the manufacturer's installation instructions. And one of the key components to Fortified is each designation that's given out, somebody has to go out and evaluate it. So everything is actually inspected, whether you get municipal inspections or not. There's a Fortified evaluator that goes out and documents that the components that are on that roof are the ones that are required in our standards, and they have the proper ASTMs and any testing standards that are required, and they're installed the way they're supposed to be installed.
Okay. And so the right way to think about this is that this is basically a roofing standard that's been developed obviously by IBHS. And does this get you insurance benefits when you roof with these standard?
In some cases, there are some benefits. There are different areas in the country that people get discounts on their homeowners insurance. Plus, there's actually a few places where you can get grant money to install a fortified roof, and once you get the designation, you get reimbursed. And then they get a yearly discount on their homeowners insurance in some cases. It doesn't happen everywhere, but there are a few places where it does happen, and Alabama actually is one of them.
Yeah, I bring it up to try to tweak our Canadian regulators who may be listening to this, our Canadian insurance companies to step up and maybe take notice.
Well, I do want to say that we have nothing to do with the discounts. That's something that
I know. Yeah, that's right. That's up to them. I get it. Well, let's move to what ICO's doing. Mark O, let's go to you. ICO has something called the Performance Application System. Do tell.
Well, sure. It's I mentioned earlier in the introductions that I was up till recently the product development manager for ICO for North America. So really focusing on both the products and the application aspects of this. So that's where I tied into this performance application method. And what Mark has already talked about, Mark Zed, I guess, talked about on the IBHS Fortified side is really what we as a manufacturer really embrace, is because most of the issues that we see as a roofing manufacturer come from installation. So we make the products, and we make very good products, but there's also the installation aspect of it that is sometimes overlooked. You mentioned standard. Standard is a relative term. I mean, in terms of that's just the bare necessity, right? So what we're talking about is better than standard type of application and offering better products. So better products and better application. So the 4 pillars of our performance application method are what Mark and I already talked about, is fasten the deck, because the deck is really important. And that's something that ICO doesn't have any really horse in that race, because it's just involving making sure that the structure is sound. But it's a really key important part of making sure the rest of the installation goes well. Then there's the seal the roof aspect of it. There's the secure the edges or the perimeter part of it. And then there's install performance shingles. So those are the 4 things that we focus on as a manufacturer, tying in both the best products and the best installation methods. And what Mark said earlier was very true. We talk about, everyone focuses on the shingles, and they should. It's aesthetically, it's important. It looks good from a style perspective, but things can happen You have to have shingles that are very durable and can withstand the weather. But if something were to happen to that first layer, the secondary barrier underneath the shingles is vitally important. And that's when we talk about, making sure the shingles stay on the roof, number one, from the wind that Dan was talking about. But also, if there is something that happens, now we've got the deck is covered based on, it's sealed and preventing water infiltration, water infusion that Mark talked about. So we really are focusing as a manufacturer on both the best products and the best performance application methods to keep that homeowner, get that homeowner the roof, the structure they deserve and they want to give them the peace of mind that they're looking for.
So what we're talking about here is a method. I assume there's drawings, there's written out. Well, I call it a standard. It's not code. That definitely is the minimum. But there's a written set of instructions. There's drawings. This is how you do it according to how we want to do it. Am I right in that's how it comes across?
Yeah, we have it all spelled out. This is something, again, as a manufacturer, we've ICO's focused. We're focusing on making really good products for the contractor. Saves them time for installation, but also we want to make sure the shingles are installed correctly and they stay on the roof. So we have this very detailed. The method is very detailed that we go through to give them the guidance they need to not only install the shingles and the accessories that go along with that we also produce, but also make sure they're doing everything on their end to ensure the whole structure is sound. So what happened down, for example, Mark talked about Sally, the most recent hurricane that's come through, Alabama. Everything has to work together for the structure to stay sound and withstand the damage that hurricanes and straight line winds and just in general can cause.
It obviously is really good, I think, for contractors to have a detailed method that's laid out and that's backed by great science, like what you're doing there. Aside from not having the roof torn off by a tornado, what would the benefits to homeowners be of your performance application method? What else might the homeowner see out of this, and what might make it attractive when they hear that a contractor is using this method?
So one of ICO's 6 core values, right? We're guided by our core values. One of them is long-term thinking. And I think that is a common sense value that homeowners have for themselves also. People like to think ahead. They want to make sure that they're going to be safe, right? Everybody talks about protecting not only protecting the roof, but protecting what's underneath the roof as well. And the reason that I think homeowners embrace this method is because at the end of the day, a lot of them don't know. Your average homeowner isn't going to know what goes on top of their roof, right? If you would ask most people, in my experience, when you ask people, they think that it's kind of just the shingles, right? Then the roof deck, okay? But when we educate them and when contractors educate them through information about ICO, the information that we're putting out, Fortified and the wonderful ICLR as well, it's about what goes into that sandwich, okay? And as they learn about that, they think long-term. Homeowners tend to think long-term and want to make sure that they're going to have everything that they need for the future, because you never know what's going to happen. A hurricane just might come through and weather is unpredictable.
It would be nice to have a roof that would, stay on or at least resist being completely destroyed by something like that. So
certainly, and that's why it's not just about the shingles. I mean, we as a manufacturer, we have put a lot of the energy into making extremely resilient shingles to make sure that when homeowners do opt for our shingles, that we are preparing them for that we are helping them be prepared for what might come at them. But you always want to cover your back, and that's where the accessory products come in as well. And I'm sure we'll talk about it soon, but just this year at the IRE, we launched 2 new excellent accessory products, and we rolled them out at a bunch of presentations, and that even Mr. Zainal there was able to participate in as well. Not as a part of the launch, not as an endorser on the launch, but just showing people, showing roofers from across the country how to do it, how to do this installation, and how to get these homes set up.
So Marco, let me put my contractor hat on for a moment when I'm hearing about the performance application method for the first time. I've been doing this for 30 years, and my roofs are great. I have never had a problem. I don't know why I should look at a bunch of cost and a bunch of difficulty and changing the way I do things in order to get involved with this system. What do you say to that guy, Mark? Because that's a lot of them.
Yeah, it's so you have to listen. Just because the old saying you've been doing it so many years doesn't mean that you've been doing it correctly. But I will say this: what we're finding from the contractors that are embracing this is they're realizing that they can set themselves apart from their competition.
Right.
They're talking about things that are real, that the homeowner may not want to think about or does think about, but all you have to do is look at the recent photos or videos of what Sally did down on the Alabama coast, and you can see what can happen if you don't plan ahead and do things, in front of that, or to prevent those types of disasters from happening. So I think you just have to have the mindset. Not every contractor is going to buy into that, Patrick. I mean, they're going to have that attitude, and that's fine. That's their call, I guess. But we're talking about folks, and this could be for anybody. I mean, it doesn't have to be any kind of you're not have to be in a special club. I mean, any contractor that we talk about this performance application method with, about taking the extra time to do things a little bit differently, above code, if you will, they will differentiate themselves from the competition. They should be able to make more money because now they're explaining to the homeowner what they're doing and why they're doing it, and why that's better than having to deal with a possible displacement. If your roof blows off, now you're in a hotel, you're having to rebuild, you're having to leave your neighborhood, all these things that you don't want to think about as a homeowner. The contractor who buys into this will be able to talk to the homeowner about what the advantages are ahead of time. And so the contractor gets that differentiation aspect of it. They get the peace of mind for that homeowner, and they should be able to, they're spending more time and money. They should be able to make more money. That's the whole idea. But the best thing is they don't want to have to come back either. Insurance companies don't want to have to pay out, and the contractor doesn't want to have to come back to that roof once they install it. They want to go there, install it the right way the first time, and collect their money. And everybody, they're happy, the homeowner's happy, insurance companies are happy, because that roof now is in place to be there for a long, long time. So that's really what's in it for the contractor. But you're right, not everyone's going to buy into that, but I think more and more are starting to see that.
I'll even add one thing on top of that, if that's okay. I agree with my esteemed colleague Mark. I think he's entirely correct. And the only thing that I would add to that is that just because you've been doing it for 30 years, if you've been doing it for 30 years, then you can sit down and write a book or an essay about what the weather's been like for the last 30 years. But no one is able to, predict with confidence exactly what weather is going to be for the next 30 years. And people want to protect themselves. People want to make sure that their homeowner clients are happy and able to think about the future that way. And as we have seen patterns over the last many years, that weather has become increasingly turbulent throughout North America. People are thinking forward and perhaps considering the future in a different way than they've thought about the past.
Yeah, well, certainly our good friends here at the National Research Labs in Canada have decided there's something that needs to be addressed there for sure. So help our contractor, now that he's convinced that this is a good system, and that this is something
that was easy.
Yeah, that's all it took. Yeah, well, Mark did most of the hard work.
All right, that's why we're teammates. Congrats, Mark. We closed the deal.
That's right. And now take us through how the contractor wants to communicate that to the homeowner. Right? What are the messages that needs to get across that's going to make the homeowner understand that the basic minimum is possibly not the way that they want to go?
Sure. I would actually send them directly to the IBHS website for the terrifying videos that they have on
Yeah.
their page of where it looks like it's raining in the kitchen.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Yeah.
No one wants
Yeah.
that.
A picture's worth 1,000 words, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, we've seen that. I've seen that in my personal life. My grandparents were affected by Hurricane Sandy, and that's what happened. They were inside their house, and the weather came inside. So that's the best way to convey this message and to communicate this message to homeowners is to show how real this can possibly be. And when you see that, when you can visualize that, right, it becomes very real and very terrifying.
Yeah. And I mean, even that, and even the prospect of durability. I mean, we're talking about a spectrum of durability here, from catastrophic events, but all the way down to just regular wear and tear and over
Sure.
time. I mean, which is what most of us deal with most of the time, right? Is that roof didn't last as long as I had hoped that it would.
For sure.
That's
And
another
when
thing
we-
that's out there, right?
When we designed this performance application method, it was done very much in parallel with the Fortified standards, right? So Fortified has that wonderful research facility, which Mr. Zainal, I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing in person at some point this year. And we did it, and there's a lot of research behind why these products are important. So I think that when speaking to a homeowner, it's important to show them what could potentially happen and explain to them, maybe there'll be an insurance break here, maybe there won't be. Let's even say that there won't be any type of insurance break or additional incentive, other than this is probably the right and smart thing to do in order to protect yourself. And it's my belief that when presented correctly and effectively by a contractor, this system sells on its own merits.
Awesome.
One of the things, Patrick, is it's preventable loss.
That's good.
Our statistics show us that if you get the roof the right way, that you will cut down the losses by 50%. Not that the roof won't get damaged, but the losses, which we talked about earlier. And that's why it's important. And one of the keys that we have also in the Fortified program, we do have certified contractors. They can go to a training through Fortified and get certified, which directs them to the manufacturers. And ICO has partnered with us in the past to put on trainings for contractors. And they have a lot of roofs in the Alabama area through a major construction firm that builds homes. So they have a lot invested. And when we were at IRE, we talked about their products. And one of the things I do encourage roofing contractors to do, is when they have a product, for instance, ICO's products, they have all the components that will actually make a fortified roof. So if they stick within their manufacturing line, they have all the components to be able to do, it's not the nailing of the deck, but once the deck is nailed, then to seal the roof deck and to do the roof edges and then to put the roof on. So that's got to be a comfort to the homeowner to have things like that from any manufacturer.
That, Mark, you're there in this incredible testing facility, and I know you've been working on a lot of new stuff. Has anything come out of the sort of the recent research that you've been doing that might be counterintuitive? It might not be something that a roofing guy thinks is ordinarily the way to do things, that you've discovered is more effective than people thought.
Well, one of the things that we've run into problems with, actually with code officials at times, until we showed them the science, is at the edge of the roof on a shingle application. Generally what you read is you put the edge metal down first and then you put the underlayment over the top. What we found is that's a vulnerability, because now the shingles do not have a connection point right at the edge. So what we require them to do is put the underlayment in place, whether it's a self-adhered or a 2-ply application or a belt and suspenders, which we call the tape and the underlayment. Once that's in place, you put the edge metal on the entire roof. Now the underlayment is actually sealed down. So that roof is sealed up. Now the big debate is, well, if the water gets past the shingles and it runs down the underlayment, it'll get between the edge metal and it'll rust it out, rust the nails out, rot the wood out. Well, our solution to that, or the way we want the roofs installed is you either use an 8-inch wide bed of roof mastic to put the starter shingle in, which engages it engages the underlayment and the edge metal together, creates a seal there, and then this first course goes on top and is sealed by the adhesive strip. Or you use a self-adhered product, which ICO has a self-adhered product that comes into play here, seals the underlayment to the edge metal. So if the water gets past the shingles, it runs over the top of it and it goes away. So we've already made that distinction that we knew there was a problem. This is the fix to the problem. And now you have an anchor point. And in our case, if it's in a hurricane area, we want the edge metal to be nailed 4 inches on center, staggered. So you have a significant hold at that particular point, and it's a great attachment point.
Awesome. Well, there's the meat and potatoes I promised at the start of this. That's awesome. Dan, I want to circle back to you, and I'm coming completely out of left field with you on this, so I don't expect you to have statistics at your beck and call. In all of this, in some of the NRC stuff and the different research you're looking at, has there been any talk about differences in snow load? I feel like their last few winters have been unbelievably cold and more snow than usual. Maybe, I don't know, going back 5-7 years. Is there anything going on with that? Is that a climate change thing, or is it even actually happening? Is it all in my head?
Right. So the report has not yet been made public, but that will be covered in this new NRC report. My understanding is that there's going to be some additional variation for the short term, and then the long term, we'll probably see reductions because it'll get warmer. Yeah.
Except that the explanation they gave us for the polar vortex last time was that because the jet stream is weaker, it's
Right.
farther south and allowing more Arctic air down. So the climate change is causing it to get colder.
Yeah, that's it's an unintuitive impact, and there are some impacts like that. But I'll hold off and I won't say too much until this report is released.
No, but that's good. It's great. We already got the breaking news. New snow load regulations are coming in the next update. Dan Sandick just. I'm gonna have to get one of those CNN chalk rods going across the bottom here. Yeah, that's wow. I didn't know we'd be breaking news today, but this is exciting.
It's a shame the border's closed. I would be running up to Canada right now.
I just wanted to add something. So Mark Zainal was talking about the fastening of the whole system, the roof system, and that's what IBHS works on is and beyond the roof, the full continuous load path of the building. That's a different story. But there's quite a bit of work going on at Western University on similar topics, but with Canadian construction, using homes that are built to like the Ontario Building Code or National Building Code. And one of the things that was identified in that work was, so historically in Canada or in Ontario, you would typically fasten your roof sheathing with 6-inch nail spacing around the outside edge of the sheathing, and then 1 foot or 300 millimeters on the inside edge in most cases. And we actually have a change in the Ontario Building Code as of 2012 that requires 6-inch spacing throughout the whole field. And that's been found to increase the uplift resistance. So when your roof is pulled off during like a high wind event or a tornado, it's actually being pulled off. It's not being lifted or pushed up from the bottom. And this is actually one change that's been made to the code in Ontario and is now practiced through the province. And it was a very small additional cost, and many framers were saying that they've already been doing additional nails by practice. So it wasn't a huge change, and we were able to get some, a relatively significant change in terms of wind resistance. And I'd also say that the S520, the standard that we're working on now, is intended to cover the full roof system, similar to what Mark has been mentioning, but maybe tweak slightly to make it somewhat more affordable for home builders in Canada, and then transfer that uplift load all the way down to the foundation, which is part of the full sort of wind resistance approach.
Right, because if the walls pull off,
but it's in the name, Dan. It's in the name of what you guys are doing, right? You're the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction, and that's what
right.
makes you guys so. That's what's so great about what it is that you're doing. It's helping people realize like this may come to your neighborhood as it has come to so many neighborhoods across North America, and we want to help prevent loss.
And I want to know why it took them until 2012 to figure out how a tornado works.
Yeah.
That's what.
Well,
there you go. What?
Still not quite fully covered there, but we're working toward it. I also wanted to say a couple of things. Like we talk about property damage and the insurance loss and disaster payouts and that sort of thing a lot. But I think most homeowners, when they go through this, they're covered for wind for the most part. But it's all the other impacts. It's being displaced for a long period of time. In Calgary, where we had that major hail event, it's taking a lot of time for people to get their homes repaired, and they're living with tarps on the roof for quite some time, and the homes are not terribly livable during this period. And when you have small communities affected, like Slave Lake during the wildland fire event back in 2011, it changes the community. People move away; they don't come back.
Yeah.
They take their payout and they move. So there's all these other knock-on effects. It's not just the financial impacts. And even if you are covered, the process of going through a home rebuild is not fun. It's something that you would like to avoid. And if we can make these changes that are not that expensive to increase resilience of building, there's so many benefits aside from just the monetary benefits, which are still big.
Without holding you to it, Dan, I promise no lawyers will contact you. If you were to build, having looked at both systems, if you were to build to the performance application method, would that meet CSA? What is it, 520?
That's 520. Yeah. So it's still in development, but what we just had the meeting actually yesterday for roof cover, and what we talked about was the code requirements for underlayment are not terribly clear in Canada. And I think in most cases, you're not getting any underlayment under your asphalt shingles. And so we're trying to address that. What is that secondary water, that underlayment, and then also secondary water barrier? What should it look like in the Canadian context? And what's described by ICO would absolutely, as it stands right now, meet that requirement or recommendation.
Yeah, I think it would probably go quite a bit beyond it, actually, from what I understand. So
it's also made in Canada, most likely.
That's right.
Right, ICO. That's right.
That's right. The shingles are for sure. Mark Carrier gave me the whole plant tour.
But don't worry, Mr. Zano, we manufacture in Alabama as well.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah. You're just handing out pork all over the place. That's fantastic. Listen, guys, this has been a great discussion. I think it's very informative. I think it's something that contractors should be contemplating as they figure out who to work with, figure out how they want to approach their business, figure out how they want to position their business in the market. Do you want to be low end? Do you want to be high end? Do you want to be somewhere in the middle? What kind of considerations do you want to communicate to your customer about their roofing and about what they should think about when they're looking at all these things? And I think now we all know a little bit, or at least I know a little bit more about all of this stuff, thanks to Mark and Dan and everybody. So we'll hope to be hearing from you guys in the future about all of these great roofing topics. So thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for watching Conversations with ICO and Friends. For more information, visit ico.com.